So our body and our mind, our nervous system, treat all stress the same. So you have a whole bunch of meetings, you have some deadlines, and you're being chased by a tiger. Same. So we know something's coming up. We have a dump of epinephrine that gets it gets our blood moving, it gets into our muscles. We have glucocorticoids going. Those are the steroid hormones. Those are the things like cortisol that they give us some oomph so that we can actually function. Then we get a whole bunch of endorphins, and they're really mood busting. They take the edge off the pain. They make us feel really good. They attach to the brain's reward centers, and then they do things like release dopamine, and that motivates you to do it again and again and again so you can feel just as good.
Women, this is a business podcast like no other. It is time to turn on your body, your life force, your eros, and your mission. It is time to tune up the volume of your voice and your message. Let this podcast be a permission slip and a portal into the next level of expansion in your business and the next upgrade in your personal brand and body of work. I will bring to you feminine leaders, way showers, and disruptors who are doing business differently. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. I am sitting here with two of my most favorite people in the world, Colleen Robinson and Dana Pemberton. If you don't know them, you should, because they are truly some of the most eloquent, inspiring, and transformational people I know. I have the privilege of working with them both behind the scenes of their business, and so have been able to just witness the full potency of their work from a behind the scenes kind of level. And not only, and I think one of the favorite things about the work I do is that I do work with transformational leaders. So by osmosis, I think, your work rubs off on me. So I'm really excited to share them with you today. And we're going to be diving into the topic of nervous system, which is a very trending, should I say, word in the online space, and at least in my corner of the internet. And so they both bring a really unique perspective into this conversation. Colleen is a TCM, an integral medicine practitioner. You've been doing this work for a long time, like really focusing on the body, the mindscape, and how everything relates to each other. Dana has been in the transformational space for a long time also, a martial artist. You've got like multiple black belts and lots of credentials in that space, and you work with leaders and individuals and really bringing out the best in them and their performance. Together you have both developed a new modality, which I'm really excited to talk about, called NAP, the New Agreement Process, which works on a subconscious, ancestral level, lots of different levels, and is like a really powerful technique to clear a lot of these unconscious patterns that are keeping us stuck. And so I'm excited to discuss how that relates to the nervous system. But yeah, let's dive right in, and I'd love to hear from your own words. Like, can you describe the nervous system to me? I mean, I know it has to do with how our brain responds to our body, and it really does create the experience of reality that we have, but you're going to use much more eloquent and scientific words. So maybe I'll start with you, Col, and then Dana, if you want to, add your perspective too.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I could go anywhere with that. That's such a beautiful introduction to all of this. Pretty eloquent, exactly. We think of it as the nervous system. There are actually multiple nervous systems throughout the body. One of the things that I love about Western medicine is they have a very professional way of saying it, but essentially they're saying, oops, there's more than we thought. And that's science's job, is to say there's more than we thought. And so the further forward we go in time, the more that a lot of the old techniques like Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine and things like that start to tie in. And so what they used to say was one nervous system, they're now saying, well, there's an independent nervous system in your heart. There's an independent nervous system in your gut. And when it comes to high-performing people, especially high-performing women, because women's nervous systems are actually set up the same, but also a little differently from men's, is that at the hardest times, our nervous system is there to help us survive. And at the best of times, our nervous system is there to help us thrive. And it's taking in all of this massive amount of information, sifting through it at that 20 million bits of data per second rate, which is astonishing when you think of it, considering our conscious mind, Bruce Lipton's numbers here, our conscious mind is 40 bits of data per second, and it's deciding what's important and how to move us forward. So the nervous system is just that way, that without having to think about it, we are always reacting to our surroundings, and then we get to choose how to respond on top of that.
Yeah, and so I would imagine that just in our modern world, not only are we surrounding to what is actually real in our present moment, we're also responding to, I guess, things firing in our brains, in our subconscious, and then add on to that like technology and just all of the stimuli in our environment. Like that's a lot. That's a big load for us to really be dealing with here. So I could imagine then, as somebody, and I want to speak about the high performing woman, the A-type woman, because that's definitely a category that I fell in. I still like to think of myself as a high performer, but from a much more simplistic and less attached kind of space. But what does that actually, what is going on, in the nervous system of a high performing individual, and what can somebody do that maybe is wired to always want to achieve and exceed and expand and upgrade. And we get a lot of that language in the online space, right? Like we're always ready for our quantum leap or a next upgrade. And in the nervous system of a high performer, that can look a lot different than somebody that's maybe is wired differently.
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. And then there's how the inherited trauma impacts things as well, which may or may not be appropriate. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. So part of what happens is that when we have a stress response, and stress isn't good or bad. We talk about this all the time. Dana's Black Belt Mind stuff, we talk about this all the time. Stress is just stress. What happens in stress is that we have this huge chemical dump, which allows us to do whatever we need to do. So our body and our mind, our nervous system, treat all stress the same. So you have a whole bunch of meetings, you have some deadlines, and you're being chased by a tiger. Same. So we know something's coming up. We have a dump of epinephrine that gets our blood moving, it gets into our muscles. We have glucocorticoids going. Those are the steroid hormones. Those are the things like cortisol that they give us some oomph so that we can actually function. Then we get a whole bunch of endorphins, and they're really mood busting. They take the edge off the pain. They make us feel really good. They attach to the brain's reward centers, and then they do things like release dopamine, and that motivates you to do it again and again and again, so you can feel just as good. So a lot of times what happens with high performing people in general, but women are actually built to withstand stress better and pain better. We've had to be over the centuries and centuries in order to do things like have children. So when that happens, the body goes, oh, I did really well under stress. I can do that again. And when you get that dopamine shot especially, it goes, oh, that was really fun. I'll do that again. So now you've got this thing on repeat that says, I can handle stress. I can handle stress beautifully. And I felt really good doing it. I might as well just do it all the time. And it becomes, in a weird way, a really useful addiction, I guess we could say, until it gets to be a not useful thing.
Take a breath and drop in with me. I have an important message and invitation. Your body of work is far too sacred and intimate to force and manufacture. You are done overthinking, overdoing, and overstriving when it comes to bringing your body of work to the world. You are ready to claim a new paradigm where the body and your frequency lead. You understand this is life's work and not just another offer. You understand that the most natural way is always the highest path. If this feels true and you're ready to turn on to your work in an enlivened way, I invite you into my private mentorship community, Body of Work. Join me for quarterly strategenic sessions, my signature body-based strategy method. Get access to my amazing team at Presence Media, including our Done For You services, and drop in for weekly Q&A, monthly business workshops to mastermind on your business, and regular somatic sessions hosted by my favorite practitioners. If you have been desiring community and support for your business and are ready to fully submit to the process of developing your body of work in highest alignment, your invitation awaits. See show notes for link and details. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of women, it probably doesn't feel like stress necessarily. I mean, it probably does in some cases, but I could imagine just that like chemical feedback loop would just begin to feel like you after some time, right? Yeah. So how do we kind of cut ourselves off from everything that's happening in the chemical factory of our body and come back to a place of homeostasis or coherence in that situation?
That is a very good question. And there's no one way to do it. A lot of people use the let's discharge the stress chemistry system. So they do some running, they do some biking, they do something that gets from the psoas muscles on down. Those are those muscles where you hold all of your stress chemistry, because...
Where are the psoas muscles?
Sort of like right above the hip.
101, right above, the hips. Oh, the hips, yes, I get that.
Center of power.
Yeah. So when you think of those core muscles and then those core leg muscles, those are your fight or flight muscles. So that's where your body says, I made some adrenaline for you, don't worry about it. I made some cortisol for you, don't worry about it. Oh, you didn't need it? I'll just store it in those muscles for next time.
Is that why a lot of the somatic work, especially in women, is getting into the hips, breathing into the hips, releasing there, because there's just so much of that chemical debris stored?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Absolutely.
That's a big part of it. Yeah. And women also tend to store stress there, because women, unfortunately, when we're talking inherited trauma as well as personal trauma, that's certainly a location where women have been taught to protect, where women have needed to protect themselves. So the body gets extra stress chemicals around there so that we're ready to fight if we have to and run if we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I guess, when we look at this through the lens of somatic work and the release work that we can do, the feeling and the sensations and the breathing, that is a way to detox or to release all of this from our systems. But I find, and this was my experience for a long time, and I think a lot of women that, are more prone to type A, they can't even access that because they're not in their bodies. They're not feeling sensation. And so it's like, how do we get to this stage of realizing what is happening and having the awareness and ability to be able to drop into the body to work with what is alive and present and alchemize and turn it into something else?
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at a lot of the work on stress and burnout, Emily Nagoski has a great book called Burnout where she gets into a lot of this. And the challenge is a lot of what the current thought out there is just do the physical work to get it out of your body. So do the running. Sometimes the yoga really works, especially if it's accessing those muscles from the psoas, from the upper hip on down. Oftentimes, However, we find in the clinic, and I especially find when I'm working with women in the clinic, that will clear out the day's stress, maybe most of the day's stress, maybe some of the day's stress, but that accumulated stress from the days where you weren't able to do a workout, from the weeks and months where you weren't able to do a workout, from the times when the stress and the trauma were so high for so long, you're going to need hours of somatic work every day, week after week to get to it. And that's where adding in another piece, like something like NAP, can help to pull that out faster. Because when we're talking certain stresses, the very interesting thing, and they're finding this with inherited trauma, is not only does it change our normal responses into stress responses, but it changes our brain as well. So how do you escape from a brain that has changed to say that life is just always stressful?
I don't know how. Nina, do you know?
We do know.
I have some ideas.
Spoilers.
These are fantastic questions and such valuable topics to explore. Coming from the perspective that I operate with on a daily basis, I get to rely on call for the science because it helps me refine and sharpen the application. Right? We talk a lot in very boots on the ground ways, and in my experience, particularly with the martial art I've studied the most, which is jiu-jitsu, I absolutely love having women in the dojo. We've run lots and lots of women's self-defense classes, and some of the best black belts I've ever worked with and trained have been women. Fundamentally because jiu-jitsu is a phenomenal practice to help people understand the difference between force and power. Typically what happens when women walk into the dojo is they come into this really powerful awakening and understanding of their own power. Because when men walk into the dojo, oftentimes their experience initially is the opposite. They realize that their physical size, their strength, and their force, and their ability to generate force doesn't count for as much as they think it does. Conversely, women land in a position where they realize that they are far more capable of generating power than they ever thought possible. Why? Women are wonderfully adaptive at learning skills and growing proficient at those skills really quickly. Typically more so than men, and I can use myself as an example. Men will step in, will think that our physical strength and our ability to generate force in that immediate moment is going to carry us through. So we tend not to listen as deeply and understand as openly and be willing to be impacted by new information as women do. We say all the time on the mat that you have to let the technique in. What that means is you have to relax and realize why we teach. The first technique that we teach in the dojo is to breathe properly. That is more than just kind of a, Mr. Miyagi cool sounding mystical martial arts trick. It's because the breath helps regulate the nervous system. So when we are breathing fully and deeply, as opposed to down to our diaphragm, through our nose to our toes, we always say, instead of just shallowly in and out of our mouths, where all we're doing is recycling the same old carbon dioxide that's we just processed and got rid of, we're just sucking it back in. When we breathe through our nose to our toes, we're getting a full oxygenation from our diaphragm through our limbs, especially our lower bodies, where much of our, like Carl was talking about, our psoas muscles, our hips, our leg muscles, the biggest muscles in our body are holding a lot of the chemicals that are prepped and primed and the hormones that are ready to help us launch into action. When I see women have that first experience in the dojo of, man, I did that technique right, and I was able to sweep this much larger, stronger opponent, this light goes on in their eyes, because they make the connection very quickly that how I regulate my internal experience, right, is exactly connected to how I can modulate my external experience. So they become very aware of the necessity to breathe and relax into the sensations of the body and be supple and fluid, generally speaking, much more quickly than men. When men get into a heightened state, when you're sparring, you're learning a new technique, we're practicing the dojo in a safe environment, but your brain and your nervous system is like, oh, danger, someone coming at me. Men tend to get stiff and very compartmentalized and focused on winning, let's say, and they become very rigid quickly, whereas women know that they don't typically have that physical advantage, so they adapt right into the principles that make jiu-jitsu as a martial art very, very, very powerful. They breathe deeply. They check in with their body. They see where the strain is. They relax. They stay supple. That practice, and part of the reason why I'm going into it, is a phenomenal way. I firmly believe and would love to see everybody practice jiu-jitsu in a safe environment, of course, never having to compete or get into any kind of sporting application of it, but just to feel the aspects of it that allow us to be calm under pressure, right? To be calm under emotional pressure, to be calm under physical pressure. It allows us to embody a sensibility around just how powerful our mind, as connected to our nervous system, can be in a way that's undeniable because you're literally experiencing it as you move through the practice of jiu-jitsu. Martial arts in general, but jiu-jitsu in particular, because its fundamental modality is grappling and like lots of close proximity and really learning the principles of leverage and movement. I watch women walk off of the mat and very quickly also make a connection between, that felt really good. I was able to do a whole bunch of things I didn't think I could physically do and apply that then out into the world in their lives. Right? And fundamentally, one of the things that allows people, and women in particularly, to do that very, very quickly is because all of a sudden, one jiu-jitsu workout and you're aware of your breathing in a completely different way. You've got a new set of neural pathways aligned around how important it is as you interface with the world to be consistently, just like when we inhale and exhale, constantly checking and regulating what your nervous system information is giving you, applying it to the physical environment, that's the exhale, then taking that feedback, breathing it in, and being in moment-to-moment interface with your environment. Women can be, and I've watched it consistently, phenomenally good at that. And it's so great to see when they then take that and whether they're on the mat or not, out in the world, monitoring their own breathing, being aware of the impact of their internal environment, and operating from there, right? It's like staying with both feet on the ground when you're walking on slippery ground and being centered in yourself in order to keep your vision open. Carl can talk about the scientific aspects of what happens when we're in fight or flight. Literally, we become solipsistic and we shrink our scope of what we can see. We get very compartmentalized and tunnel visioned. It's really powerful to be able to know that you have a direct ability to control that shrinking of vision and that expansion of vision when you're under stressful circumstance.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and that applies so well, like in the dojo, in the office, like it's all the same thing, isn't it? And just like huge praise to the breath. The breath was so fundamental to my journey. Shout out to Carmen Gann, who we both know, who is just such an incredible teacher.
Carmen.
Of breath.
Love Carmen.
And what I noticed in myself, what I see all the time, like just bringing this into the domain of business and, us as creatives that are bringing our body of work to the world and launching offers to the world. And that can trigger fight and flight too, right? Like we are in this creative process, which I'm sure is its own chemical concoction of different bits and pieces going on. And then just the vulnerability and the fear and the anxiety sometimes of releasing it to the world and then looking at how the world is responding. And I've blown so many launches. I know so many other people that have felt like it was the thing and then released it to the world. And in that process, so much has come up biochemically in the body and how potent it can be to just really be able to leverage and understand the breath in those situations, to just come into that regulated, peaceful, coherent state And I feel in my body, just as you said that, like the zooming in and then the relaxing out. But Call, I would love you to speak to that fight and flight response, and how even if it is a launch, it can feel like it's a tiger, and what's actually happening in our systems when we experience this.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, my little aside is anybody who has blown a launch, anybody who has been going into something really important, and that chemical cocktail hit and things went sideways. Yes, that is not what the plan was, and that is not perhaps ideal as to what we want to happen in that moment. But if that is bringing up what it needs to bring up to move you forward, then that was cheap at twice the price, because that allows you to move out that old trauma, those old stress responses. It sets you up to be so much calmer and clearer and so much more you moving forward. So that is my aside.
Yeah, I love that, right? It's not like the it's like the capital P plan. It's just like the plan that we need to truly embrace what we need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Keeps you out of the paradigm of winning and losing and moves you into the paradigm of winning and learning.
Yeah.
If you're really attempting to do something of value, you're going to fail at it sometimes. And that actually turns into a thing that you can rely upon as a trustworthy reference point and metric to know that you're really attempting something genuine, because genuine is where it's going to be powerful and fully innovative and creative. So you almost have to go through some of those experiences to really, really make the kind of impact that you are reaching to.
Yeah, it's the initiation. I love that reframe.
Yeah. And then the fight or flight, and the fight or flight, we talk about the F's all the time because we think about it as fight or flight. It's actually fight, flight, freeze. Fight or flight are what happens when we're hitting the gas, we're going, we're either going to run or we're going to punch somebody. Freeze is when our body hits the brakes and says, I don't know what to do here. Your best bet is to do nothing. And sometimes when a big project goes sideways, it's because we've gone into freeze. There's also fit in and fawn, which are things that we go, why was I so nice to that person? Because your brain decided you had to be nice to that person to survive. And that's where the old trauma and the inherited trauma can kick in, because they have been proving, there have been more and more scientific studies that have been proving what Chinese medicine and other, what First Peoples have been saying for a long time, which is you can inherit trauma. Science is now going, oh, holy crap, you can inherit trauma. And there are some amazing people out there doing some amazing work on it. And part of what's fascinating about that is, let's just say, hypothetically, you're a woman, and hypothetically, your ancestors for many, many generations weren't allowed to do things like own businesses or make important decisions or, I don't know, have a bank account or carry money with them or own land or property. And suddenly you, who were raised completely opposite that, so you don't think that's an issue, but as you go to take a step forward, those layers and layers and layers of this is dangerous, you will be attacked, come up. Of course you're going to blow a launch. Of course things are going to go sideways. Or at least they have the potential to, because you've got centuries and centuries of do not do that. At the very least, you will be in danger. And at most, you're going to die if you try to do that. And honestly, I'm so impressed at how many people have that come up and manage to stumble forward anyway. That's a testament to how phenomenally powerful people who move forward are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost feels to me, I mean, on one side, it's kind of nice. It's not personal, right? This is inherited. This is like my ancestors and the culture. And there's just so much that plays into, ourselves and our experience of reality. And the other part of me is like, wow, that's what we're up against a lot then, and it's hard to reverse something that we don't even know fundamentally, like how it is distorting our experience of reality. And so I know, and we're going to talk about NAP, because that's one way in to really do this work that we don't really even know is there. But can you speak a little bit more about what they are finding when it comes to ancestral trauma and like how that is showing up in people's life generation after generation?
Yeah, there's some incredible studies that have been done. A lot of things, obviously, you're not supposed to experiment on humans in certain ways, so more with humans, it's observational. They'll take certain groups of people and they'll look at their history and they'll find that people who are Jewish whose parents were in Europe during the war have inherited very, very specific kinds of PTSD. They found that there's I forget if it's from Norway or Finland, I apologize, a study that people whose ancestors went through a period of starvation, they found that they are more or less likely to have digestive issues or diabetes or other problems around food. When they can do experiments on animals, they can be more specific about, it sounds so terrible, about testing trauma responses on them. And one of the studies that gets cited a lot because it's really fascinating, although again it was a study done on mice. If the mice rise up against us, I understand. I apologize. And in this particular study, they took mice and they wafted a polyphenone, basically a cherry blossom smell, into the habitat while they mildly electrified the floor. So these mice really quickly learned when they smelled that smell, they started to panic. And then they stopped electrifying the floor, but they kept wafting in the chemical. The mice kept panicking. They removed them from that habitat. They allowed them to have the next generations of mice. And in those subsequent generations, at the same approximate rate as humans, so PTSD is roughly about 70% heritable. They found that those subsequent generations of mice panicked at the smell of cherry blossoms. They also found, which I find so fascinating, they found that there were actually little switches on their genes. This is the epigenetics that people are talking about. Specific switches changed to say, you must be afraid of this. This is dangerous. And they also found that their brains changed. So not their entire brain, not even the entire olfactory center, which is where we process smells, just the very specific part of the olfactory center that handles that polyphenone. So that got really sensitized to smell tiny, tiny, tiny bits of cherry blossom smell. The interesting thing about that is the cherry blossom smell was never the problem. It was what the brain seized on in that moment, but the actual problem was the floor, or to be more accurate, the scientists. So this is A, the problem with inherited trauma, but B, oddly, the reason why it can be easier to clear than you'd think, easier to change than you'd think. Because so often what we think of as the problem, as the issue, when we go back and do some work on it, our brain goes, oh, actually, yeah, that smell never hurt me. I've smelled that 10,000 times and it never hurt me. I got panicky, but it was actually fine. It becomes a lot faster to clear at that point.
Mm-hmm. Dana, what are you seeing in like the leaders that you work with and the clients that you're working with, through your approach that have this stuff that just isn't clearing, through the more traditional modalities of healing? And I know that you guys are now weaving NAP into your work, but what have you seen over your experience in clearing this ancestral stuff?
That's awesome. Meg, a great question. And fundamentally, in working with the Black Belt Mind, I deal with people a lot and getting them to understand the impact and power of their present time mindset. Right? And the ancestral work allows people to find an explanation for things that are going on that they don't understand the presence of and the impact of. And that's really, really powerful because when we can look at ourselves as a work in progress that is constantly learning, growing, and adapting, and not failing out of personal fault, but out of missing information, well, then the remedy for that becomes immediately more accessible. If I'm failing because there's something fundamentally wrong with me, and I can't identify what it is, well, then I'm going to build the momentum of despair and hopelessness around my ability to actually overcome that thing. I'm battling a monster I can't see. The minute that I'm able to identify that potential monster or that that pattern of obstacle that seems to be in my bones, I get this brand new kind of space around it. And that's what the ancestral piece allows people to do. It's like, oh, it is a beautiful arena to really understand why we say things like the truth will set you free. When you face a possibility that is full of truth, if you can say to yourself, wow, okay, I've been really struggling with my ability to step up and stand in my power in front of speaking to an audience. I find out that there's a piece of that that has been ancestrally inherited. It kind of messes you up at first because you're like, oh my gosh, that's so much. I wasn't born then. Why did my ancestors curse me with the gift of, the gift of that knowledge? But that also follows the other principle of the truth, which is, yes, it'll set you free, but you have to confront it first. And first it's going to mess you up a little bit. Why that's beautiful in and of itself. Why it's even more beautiful in application is that you realize that the truth is always there to support you. The truth is always there to give you the information that you're missing. That's why I think everybody has the experience of, you hear something truthful that's difficult to listen to at first, but as you muster your courage to face it, integrate it, to understand and accept the information it's trying to give you, regardless of the consequence of that truth, it feels internally better. You calm down, your nervous system re-regulates itself because the truth, even a harsh truth, is a reliable point of reference. So as soon as people start understanding that dynamic and they start trying to reach to their acceptance of a truthful thing as opposed to deny it, they get a sense of just how much impact their mindset can make on their perspective and perception of anything that they're dealing with. So that's where the ancestral piece comes in so beautifully. Very simply put, it's because it provides new explanation. You go, wow. And even if it feels like it's something that you could never verify or you couldn't, go tangibly experience because you're talking about something that happened 6 generations before you, just the possibility that you are getting an explanation that might not have to do with your deficiencies, with it being your fault, with it being something that you can be blamed for and ashamed of in terms of, well, if I could just pull my act together, I could get this done. Or if I just didn't make this mistake all the time, I could get this done. When you have that possibility open up, oh, okay, I didn't know that this thing was impacting me in the way that it is. I now know that it's very possible that part of the reason why I'm stumbling in this area or having difficulty or get so flooded and overwhelmed with anxiety and fear when I try to step out to do something that my brain's telling me I really want to do, that has something to do with something that my ancestors went through. It's literally a whole new world. Because now, with that truth, you can take effective action. You can do something about that. You can even without a process like NAP, which is something developed, which is so beautiful, smooth, and efficient. Even just with the knowledge yourself, if you've got the guts to be afraid of something in a way that you don't understand and face it and try and do it anyway, the minute you get that truth, the minute you get that possibility of oh, that's why I'm having such a difficult time with this. That alone, NAP can help you do it more smoothly, but that alone can help bolster you to step forward in a new way and not shut down into fight or flight and shrink your vision, but be able to take a breath and keep expanding your vision, stay present to that thing that's scaring you, and actually deal with the thing, not the fear of the thing, but the thing itself. I watch that happen on a daily basis with people across all dynamics of their lives, personally, professionally, creatively, in terms of their self-compassion and self-care. Creating that possibility is the game changer.
Yeah, and I love that, your online platform is called the Digital Dojo. And this is kind of like life as a dojo, right? Like whatever is being revealed to us in this present moment, even if it feels challenging or confusing, like that is the thing that unlocks for us, right? When we are able to be in our power, meet it head on, and find what is being revealed in that situation. And I just want to speak a bit more on the ancestral stuff, and Call, if you have like a scientific explanation of this, which I'm sure you do, but as we start, meeting these moments that are revealing parts of us that maybe were unconscious and healing them in ourselves, that also ripples out into our ancestry and heals the other generations too, which is so cool. And I've noticed shifts in my relationships, even with my family, that have just it almost feels like we've come into a new relationship, and it's from the work I know that I'm meeting head on. And so can you speak to how that actually works, how we can heal relationships in our lineage through meeting these moments in ourselves?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I will try to keep it focused because there are so many ways to answer that.
So much fun stuff to talk about there.
Yeah, and it's funny, while Dana was talking about some of that about facing truth, you would not believe how many times we'll work on something, and it's just coming to mind a woman, gosh, a couple months ago, who was she was starting a business, a herbal business, and she was doing wonderfully, but then she started to run into all of these odd roadblocks that shouldn't have been there. We did some work together. We got her to a place. She got her to a place. We were happy and thrilled and so excited to facilitate, where she really was able to move whatever it was, whatever that truth was. And then came back a couple of weeks later and said, so this is odd. So one of my aunts came to me, who has never mentioned anything about our family history before. I haven't talked to her since doing this work. And she came to me and said, by the way, I found this information. I thought you might like it. Our great whatever grandmother was in witch trials in Europe. And she was a herbalist. And I found out all these things that happened. And I know you're interested in this work. I thought you might want to know. So when we are willing to face the truth, it ripples out, and then we get that feedback of, here's what's moving, here's what's shifting. And it's harder to study things in the present impacting the past. There actually have been a few studies. One of them was quite accidental about that happening. The gentleman in this study was looking to debunk this idea that people could actually energetically impact things around them. So he set up a very stringent study with people who had a very specific illness, which was quite damaging and oftentimes quite fatal. And he had one person, so that there was no cross contamination of ideas. He had one person take the names and write them down. Another person randomly assign numbers. Another person randomly assign volunteers. This process went on, and the volunteer's job was to focus on these people, to focus on them being well as quickly and easily as possible and getting out of the hospital as quickly as possible. And when it came to the big aha reveal, which was his point that you can't possibly impact anyone energetically, part of the trick of it, I want to say, is that he had chosen people who had been in the hospital between 10 and 50 years ago, 10 and 70 years ago. So there was no way that people could impact them. And yet, the people who had been focused on by this group of volunteers, who had been, in essence, worked on by this group of volunteers, they were in the top 5 or 10%, I forget, of the patients who had very few symptoms, very few side effects, who had gotten out of the hospital fastest. There are signs that show that when you change something in the present, it changes things in the past. And when you look at a lot of First Peoples, some First Peoples don't even have words for now, because time is much more of a soup as far as they're concerned. And when you're looking at quantum physics, a lot of quantum physics is saying we're selecting this idea that time is a straight line because it's super convenient for us. But we're pretty sure we're making that up. And more as you look at the science, in very, very like $15, $20 words, they're saying, we're pretty sure we're making that up. And my last little story, just because it's so exciting, if I may, if we have time. One of the first times I had done work like this on myself, I remember having this distinct thought that, oh, the women in my family, this is not just me, this is the women in my family. And I had that thought, it went into my head, it went out of my head, I did the work. Maybe an hour later, I was walking out, I grabbed my phone, and I saw all of these missed calls from like all of these people in my family, and I thought something terrible has happened, because like two of my cousins, my sister, my mother, two of my aunts had all called me, all from the same side of the family. And I listened to the first message just so I'm ready to make the phone call and deal with what it was. And my mom was saying, you know, honey, I just had this thought randomly about an hour ago. And she then outlines exactly what I've been working on. And she says, and I just wanted to tell you because I thought you'd get it. But isn't that funny? I just don't think I need that anymore. And then my sister leaves me the same message. My aunt leaves me the same message. My cousin leaves me the same. They hadn't talked to each other. And they all said, I'm calling you just because I have a feeling that you'll get it. So anecdotally, yeah, this is very cool stuff.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the women listening who have been, doing the work and coming back to their heart and their wholeness and their womb. And, I'm sure that they have similar experiences where something has unlocked or revealed in themselves, and that ripple has been, they've received the feedback from their line. And so, yeah, even if it's not statistically proven, I think anecdotally in our experience, we can feel that is true. And so, it's interesting when we walk this path and we know that, we're here to be of service and to be leaders in whatever way that feels like. And that as part of that initiatory experience, like we do meet these things head on to process and heal and integrate. And ultimately, it is coming to a place of peace and contentment and wholeness. And why isn't that easier for humans to hold, and I'd love this to maybe segue into, I'd love to discuss like just fear as an energy, the frequency of fear, and how this is like so deeply charged in our matrix reality, in the collective and in, ourselves. And I know that with NAP, with the New Agreement process, you work with these energies, and you did one on weight loss and money, and you're the one that's coming up is on fear and like recoding fear in the system. So can you just speak about like how NAP works and how it can really help release the fears so we can, as consistently as possible, really be in that contented, grounded, whole place?
That's again a fabulous question. And NAP is based off of something Dana created in the Black Belt Mind called AAA, Acknowledge, Accept, Agree. And part of that shift is we tend to not want to acknowledge and accept things that we don't like, because when we do, we slide into agreement with them. So we tend to not want to acknowledge that guy that we've got a meeting with on next Wednesday is going to be a jerk, because we walk in and we automatically slide into that agreement, and we see all the jerky things he's doing and he's going to say before he even doesn't say them. What NAP does is, in this very simple repeat after me way, it says, well, if you acknowledge it, you can get the information. If you get the information, you can really find out what's going on, and then you can choose a new agreement. Part of the way the wording is set up is it's set up to be inclusive of all of your experiences, even and especially the ones that you don't remember, that you've blocked out, that you've inherited ancestrally. Because what can happen when we're facing these fears is we're dipping our toe into the adrenaline lake, and we're saying, okay, I'm willing to face this fear of dealing with a jerk-faced jerk on Wednesday. And it feels like, look, he's just a guy. I've dealt with weirder guys before. I've dealt with bigger deals before. It shouldn't be much. But then it carries the weight of all of the things that are attached to it. And that's when we tend to think, oh my goodness, I can't even handle one simple meeting with one challenging person. I'm just not cut out for this. What's wrong with me? We don't realize we're dealing with the entire lake of trauma that came before it. So what happens with something like NAP is we're draining the whole lake. That sounds terrible ecologically. We're changing the chemical.
The lake.
Thank you. Thank you. We're allowing the lake to become what it was meant to be, which is not a chemical soup of fear, which is this beautiful place of clarity and depth and calm. Because if we've gotten through that many traumas and we're still here, we're capable.
Yeah. So I want to know how it works. And I know it works on a level that is kind of beyond space and time and words. And maybe there just are no words, but I see the results that you're getting people through, these nap pods that you do. I was part of a nap pod and I got to experience the transformation for myself. And it feels so simple. I mean, it's a repeat after me process. You say something, we repeat it back. That goes on for a while. And in that exchange, things just shift. Like, how does that work?
You might have a different answer. I think there are a few answers. I think one of the black belt mind answers is when you face a truth and choose to shift your agreement, things shift. Mm-hmm. On an integral medicine world, because there are aspects of integral medicine there, and allowing things to change on a nervous system level and the level of intentionality there, when we, very short assessment of integral medicine is that we can intend change, and when we do so very cleanly, it allows things to shift in a quantum way. We are surrounded by a 0-point field of infinite possibilities, and what we are doing with NAP is very deliberately choosing to access that unlimited amount of potential in very specific, very safe, very person-motivated ways. So each person gets to change in the way and at the rate that suits them. There's also very specific wording to address specific kinds of nervous system activation and calm those down. There's also very specific wording to address things like shame and things like blame. And those carry so much weight to them that when we are being told and then say out loud again that we are not to blame, that this is not our fault, that we had very good reasons for doing this, it calms and resets our nervous system in a way that very few other things can and do. And there are more answers than that, but those are the shorthand ones. Do you have a different answer?
I have some other thoughts, but those are
Yeah,
all
go
awesome.
ahead. Yeah, I was going to ask how you wanted to respond to that.
Super, and I build on those things that Carl says. I love being present for these kinds of conversations because I get to listen to Carl explain things to people outwardly that we talk about all the time. So I get to learn new things about them every time. It's like a brand new situation, which reminds me of exactly what I want to say about this. The more and more we reach into this space and do nap with people and see the results that are happening, the more and more aware I become of something I've always thought was true, which is that the truth is always impactful. We can deny its presence, we can accept its presence, but it's always having an impact on us. And I'm talking about truth more in the direction of it being less a factual thing and a more of an energy. The truth is a resonant energy. That's why it impacts us. When we feel something that's resonant, that feels truthful, we are at the threshold of the very foundation of the thing that we need to shift our behavior around something. How do we know that we've shifted our behavior around something? Well, when we act differently in its presence or towards it, and then we see a different result. We know that the resonant truth that got us to feel differently is a powerful and reliable metric. Fundamentally, and it's beautiful because I didn't necessarily expect it to unfold this way. As we apply more and more the practice and the process of NAP to kind of any and all situations that people bring our way, we realize that its power is really anchored in the idea that we always have the choice to look at our experiences with either one eye or both eyes. When we're looking at things with one eye, we only see half of what's present. When we're talking about fear, fear is a gift in the sense that it's a metric that has allowed us as a species to survive because it's a signal that we might be in danger. Okay? That's a wisdom that has been passed down to us from our ancestors in an inherited manner. With one eye, though, unfortunately, that can feel like a burden, right? All I was taught was to be afraid of a whole bunch of things that in my present time in life I don't have to face because my ancestors were scared and they taught me to be scared too. When we realize that resonant truth is an entity, it shifts our feelings, and we look at that truth that's present in any form with both eyes, right? That's why we're binocular creatures. We have to be able to see the distance, the depth of something. With both eyes, we can see that, right, that could be a signal that this thing I'm feeling fear about is dangerous. But with both eyes, we can also see that fear is also a crucial component of excitement. If there's a possibility that the thing that we are facing that might be scary and could be dangerous, but there's also a possibility that that thing is feeling full of fear because of the value of the thing on the other side of facing that fear, and we can harness the excitement and choose to be in balanced perspective to go, hey, well, I'll be mindful of the things that are scaring me, of course, that might be dangerous, but I'm also going to look for the gift in this thing that I've inherited, or the gift in this thing that I'm experiencing in terms of this lens of fear that I'm looking through. Then all of a sudden, we've got a whole new possibility around anything that seems scary. Not only is something that's scary potentially bringing something that's dangerous to us, it's also bringing us unprecedented possibility. It's also bringing us super valuable new opportunity that if we can modulate our fear of the danger, we can also experience and reach for in a new way, make new choices about how we might get the gift of the unprecedented possibility that's on the other side of that fear. That allows us to be in a position to simply look at intent. And I'm saying it in that manner because the wisdom that's been handed down, and I use that word deliberately too, by our ancestors, from their intent was a gift. It was a good thing. Here's the best of what we use to survive. We're passing it to you. When we realize just how far back our lineage goes, and also realize that if that idea of wisdom as a gift is more true than it's not true, then we had a whole bunch of people intending to give us their best, backing us up, okay, with the best that they could offer. That's pretty abundant. That's pretty validating. That's pretty like, wow, I'm being gifted by the people that came before me. The cool thing about that is that we've all experienced it. We get a Christmas gift from our grandma or our aunt, and it's the same sweater or the same pair of socks that she's given us every year. But when we recognize that a gift is a well-intended offering, and that intent is pure and good-hearted, then the gift itself doesn't matter so much. What matters is that we feel worthy of being gifted, of being handed down something valuable. When we can land in a place where that possibility is as clear to us as the possibility of something that's being handed to us that we didn't understand being a burden, okay, then we have the choice to look for the good in it, look for the blessing in it, look for the gift in it, and do that a few times, and you start to feel how any shift that you are making when you're facing the resonant energy of truth starts to build momentum. And then we start to build more and more possibility out of the possibility that we never thought possible before into even more possibility. That's where NAP really works and comes to life. It changes our agreement with the truth fundamentally and allows us to see that truth And then in momentum, truth in any form is an opportunity.
That's a good answer.
It is a good answer.
I'm glad. Thank you. That was because your answer was awesome.
And what I kind of like am just feeling from what you're saying too is just that new relationship with the information, right? And receiving it as a gift and just receiving it in the heart opens up a whole new experience of reality, right? And so that's the shift.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, really well said, Meghan.
Yeah.
Beautifully encapsulated. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a quantum entanglement piece and a morphic field piece to that as well, but we don't have an extra
We're
6
gonna
hours.
find- okay.
So
That'll be episode 2.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, amazing. I know we are getting to time, but I would love to leave everybody just knowing that if this feels resonant and if they are interested in kind of doing this deep ancestral work in a way that actually feels like really lovely and light and working with you and a group of amazing humans, your next nap pod is on fear, and that's starting in June. And then aside from that, you have lots of recordings and masterclasses, so we will link in the show notes to all of your stuff. You've got a great 3-day mindset reset that is a great introduction to your work. Did you want to take a moment, though, just before we finish, to just talk about the nap pods a little bit and the one coming up in June?
Mm-hmm. I have a thought. Do you have a thought?
I do. It's really simple. We are going to create the possibility that the reason why we say learn to love your fear is so powerful and so true, because love really in its fullest expression is acceptance. When we can learn to accept our fear, we can maximize all of the things that it has to offer us, because it has a lot to offer us in terms of being a reliable point of reference to help us stay connected to ourselves, stay connected to our courage, which is the thing that allows us to face our vulnerability, which is so important because the vulnerability is where our true innocence and creativity flow from. So when we can step into something, feel the fear, face it anyway, then have a feedback loop that tells us that if there's more fear present, it's just another opportunity to experience our courage and our self-worth, then we're really, really making some powerful shifts that are going to do nothing but build momentum and become more and more embodied in any experience you have.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And one of my answers is, one of the things I love about working in the pods is that when you're working with that many people, the resonance builds faster, things clear more easily, things clear more gently, things are so powerful because you've got more and more people causing almost a bigger echo. But also there's this beautiful aspect that if there's something that you have been afraid to face, or if there's something that you haven't thought is yours, and you're there doing your best for the other person, and you're like, I'll do the round with them just to support them. I can't tell you how many times somebody has said, well, everybody else except me seems pretty shaky about this. It really seems to be hitting them. So I'll do the repeat after me out loud, because this isn't about me at all. And by the end of the round, they're rocked, because it was something that was buried so deep that they would never have thought of it on their own. But because they're there for everybody else, it shifts, and it shifts in ways that would have taken them potentially days, months, weeks, years to get to. So it's also kind of fun. I mean, I'm hilarious, and you're becoming hilarious.
Doing my best.
I got to give you props. You're becoming hilarious.
And how you two work together. You haven't done much of it on this call, but like your muscle testing, your chemistry and how you work together is just a masterpiece in itself.
We do tend to
Thank you.
thank you very much. Yeah, we do tend to test back and forth, and it's just it's just fun. It's just fun. It's so nice to have things move without it having to be arduous.
Yeah, and instantaneous, to some degree. And I feel like we are all carrying fear, whether you call it fear or shame or guilt or doubt or whatever, these like lower frequency emotions that are keeping our hearts contracted. Like we carry this, and I think we all desire to live more in our hearts more, and to carry more light in our being, and to experience like the beauty and flow and synchronicity that is. I think a lot of us are experiencing that more and more as our dominant reality. But there's like until we become oneness, there's more work to be done, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
And excitedly so.
And excitedly so, the gift of being a human, right? This is why we're
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Groups are a wonderful way to experience the truth of I'm not the only one, and many hands make light work.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And just connecting with our fellow humans on a deeper level, I think, is so what everyone is craving these days, is like
Yeah.
the core of human connection, which your groups certainly provide that. So like I said, I'm going to link it all in the show notes. It's been such an honor having you both here. It's always so lovely to connect 2 days in a row for us.
I know.
Yeah, thank you. That's
We're
exciting.
spoiled.
Yeah, I know.
Awesome.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode, and thanks so much to another amazing guest. If you love this episode, please make sure to subscribe to our channel. We are committed to producing weekly episodes to turn you on and tune up the volume of your voice and impact in the world. I would love to stay connected. You can come and follow me over on Instagram at The Grounded Visionary. Or if you're interested in learning more about the services we provide at Presence Media, check us out at www.presencemedia.co. See you next week.